All right. Hi, I'm Darla Clayton. I'm the Community Engagement and Fundraising Specialist for Angioma Alliance for the Eastern region. And we are really excited to be talking to Deb today. Before we get started, I just wanted to ask if you have questions you want to ask, feel free to put them in the chat and we will introduce them in the second portion of our meeting today. But you can also turn on your mic and just ask your question yourself. It'll be a pretty casual Q&A session. During the talk with Deb, though, if you could actually just go ahead and mute yourselves now so that we don't hear any background noise going on at your house, that would be great. And let me see if I had anything else on my notes. I think that was it. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Karen Snavely to introduce Deb Brandon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Snavely. I am the Three Rivers Alliance Three Rivers Angioma Community Alliance Chair. It's a mouthful to say. So welcome, Deb. This is Deb Brandon, and she is a mother, a writer, a textile artist, and she's highly respected in her field. She's a speaker, an author, just a wonderful person. And she has her story to share about surviving some cavernous malformation bleeds, or CCM bleeds, and she's had subsequent brain surgeries, and she's a survivor of all of those. And she's brought so much awareness to our community and to those outside of our community about brain injury through her writing and public speaking. She has authored a book, But My Brain Had Other Ideas, a memoir of recovery from brain injury. And she also has a blog. So welcome, Deb. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Thanks very much for having me. As Karen mentioned, I underwent brain bleeds from cavernous angiomas. The first time it happened, the symptoms were really fleeting, and I didn't really think much of them. There was a lot of stress going on, and I thought it was physical manifestation of stress. So I didn't even go to a doctor or anything. Then a couple of months later, I happened to have a checkup with my PCP, and I mentioned it, and that's when I got diagnosed, which, as I'm sure you know, it's a little bit scary, a lot scary. But at that point, I didn't have any other symptoms. So after the initial scare, it sort of receded into the background. But there was one neurosurgeon who said to me, the chances of having another bleed are slim to none. Don't worry about it. And I said, well, how will I know if I have another bleed? And he goes, you'll know. And a year later, I proved him wrong that yes, I had bleeds, acute bleeds, and that's when my life turned upside down. So the two that bled, one was in the brain stem and the other was in the right parietal lobe. The one in the right parietal lobe was rather large, so life got exciting. I went into major denial. I did not want to read about it, research it. I didn't want to join any support groups, because if I ignored it, even though the evidence was right there in front of me with all the various deficits, I thought if I don't acknowledge it, it'll go away. This is just a nightmare. Unfortunately, and I'm sure some of you have gone through this, hospital at that point. One of the attending neurologists, at one point, I went in with seizures. One of the attending neurologists, the seizures didn't show up on the EEG. So she basically said I was seeking attention, this kind of thing, which is quite devastating to someone who's going through this. And she told, and when I mentioned, and then she said that CCMs are harmless. And I said, well, if they're so harmless, why is my balance so bad? And my reaction was, her reaction was, oh, it's bad. So she hadn't looked at my file at all at that point. And I said, yeah. So she said, show me. So I demonstrated, and then she told me I was faking it. Now, at that point, I couldn't walk heel to toe at all. So second step, I'd start, I'd fall. So come second step, she says, keep going. So I fell, and she said I was faking it. That was quite devastating. I felt, well, maybe I'm not faking it. I knew I wasn't faking it, but maybe I am being melodramatic. Maybe if I tried harder, my balance would be better, this kind of thing. I was really in bad shape for a long time. And since then, I learned that a lot of seizures, bona fide epileptic seizures, a lot of them don't show up on EEGs for whatever reason. They're not captured. And my neurologist at the time put me on anti-seizure meds anyway, because he felt that there was good reason to. But that whole episode shocked me out of denial. And that's when I went, I can't continue living like this. So I started researching it, ended up finding, I learned that the only known treatment is brain surgery to prevent future bleeds. Found a neurosurgeon, Dr. Spetzler, in Phoenix, Arizona. Ended up having 3 brain surgeries. I mean, his recommendation was these are life-threatening, one because of where it was, the brainstem, and the other because of how large it was. And then after the surgeries, I went back into denial for a while. Well, denial's good. It keeps you from letting things go completely nuts. As you well know, the fear can really overwhelm. And I remember feeling that fear was the one thing I had absolutely no control over. And when it hit, it would really hit and override everything else. But again, once I came out of denial, my instinct was to fight this, that I wanted to get better. I had the surgeries to reclaim my life, and I was going to bloody reclaim my life, no matter what. So I fought tooth and nail. If I had a really bad headache, I try and push myself through it. Neurofatigue, I tried to push myself through it. I insisted on traveling. The price was really heavy. I mean, I'd spend days with horrendous headaches and that kind of thing. And of course, with fatigue, the deficits get a lot worse. It's this vicious cycle. But I continued to fight. I just refused to give in. I mean, travel was a classic thing. I grew up traveling, and it was a huge part of my life. And I felt that I refer to my brain as the bloody brain, for obvious reasons. When I wrote the book, my working title was The Bloody Brain, but I was told you can't call it that because then people will think it's a horror story. So I thought, oh, can I call it The Bloody Brain? And I was laughed out at that point. So I decided with travel that I was not going to let the bloody brain bully me into submission, into a lesser life. And people kept telling me, oh, eventually you'll accept this. And to me at the time, how can you accept something like this? I mean, it turns your life upside down. You feel damaged. I felt I couldn't accept it. Whenever anyone talked about acceptance, in my mind, I had this vision of a frail woman lying in bed with a lot of medication by her bed, waiting for someone to save her for death. I don't know. I couldn't accept that. So I happened to mention it to my neuropsychologist, and he said, well, try and think about it in terms of learning to live with it, learning to come to terms with it. And that I could deal with. But, you know, I set that aside. When people said something about acceptance, my hackles didn't rise, but I was still kind of iffy about it. But I continued to fight. To me, it was, no, I am going to get through this. At that point, I realized that I'm not going to go back to the old Deb, but I was going to continue to fight. But as things got better, so I think, you know, the first 2 years were kind of horrendous, and then things started getting better. As things settled down, I did start learning to live with it in the sense of, well, originally when the neuropsychologist told me about learning to live with it, I thought he meant that using compensation techniques and coping mechanisms will become second nature. I won't even think about them. So the bloody brain will not constantly be there in my awareness. Now, when I first came out of hospital, I felt like I'd been dropped in a completely alien landscape without a compass. And I needed some sort of guidance. And remember, at that point, I didn't know anything about, I still wasn't happy about the notion of support groups and that kind of thing. So I was a voracious reader. I am now, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I looked for books, and the books were either medical textbooks written by caregivers, and the few that were written by brain injury survivors, now I'm talking 2007, 2008, there were very few written by brain injury survivors, and they focused on the trauma of the brain injury and a little bit on the acute recovery. And I needed more. I needed anecdotes from people in the trenches, going through life, healing, this kind of thing. And I couldn't find anything. So I decided, okay, I'll follow my nose and I'll write about it to help me understand it. And hopefully along the way, it'll help other brain injury survivors going through the same journey, you know, might help them through my story, the sort of thing that I had been searching for. So through the writing, I mean, I continued to bumble along, but through the writing, I became much more aware and self-aware. I became better able to ask the doctors questions and get answers. It really helped me figure out who I was, what the bloody brain had done to me, put things in perspective, this kind of thing. So the process of learning to live with it, it was very much an evolution. It didn't happen over a short period of time. It continues to go on, quite frankly. Some of the things that happened along the way, I couldn't read. When I came out of the surgeries, I couldn't read. Not that I didn't have the mechanism of reading. You know, give me a paragraph, I could read each word, but I couldn't string a sentence together. I couldn't string two words together. So, you know, the occupational therapist in inpatient rehab, the first time she asked me to read a paragraph, you know, I read it out loud. I was so proud of myself. Look, I can still read. And then she said, can you tell me what that was about? And I was completely taken aback. And she goes, and I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. And then she said, okay, read the sentence. And I read the sentence and I'm through it. I'm trying to memorize and I'm going back and forth. And then she goes, okay, tell me about the sentence. Nothing. And then it went, tell me, give me a word from the sentence. And again, I had nothing. Between my short-term memory and my short attention span, there was nothing there. And at that point, I was scared out of my mind because I had always been a voracious reader, and this would mean that my life would be, I don't know, flat, two-dimensional. But things did get better. I did manage to make sense of sentences and paragraphs, and then an entire, well, a short chapter, this kind of thing. But it was really slow going. And then I found myself, I was reading more, young adult was about as high level as I could go. And I was trying to figure out why I could manage that, but not full-blown books. And I came to the conclusion that it must be the size of the print. So then I went to large print books, and that didn't quite do it. And someone suggested an e-reader. And that was when things got better. I still can't read dense books. Well, I can, but it's really hard for me. And by the time I reach a certain, I actually am trying to read a book now, and every time I take a break and try and get to it the next day, I have to reread a whole bunch to see what's going on. But a lot of books I can read and enjoy reading, as long as they're not too many characters there. If there are too many characters, I can't keep track of them. But I feel like it's back enough that I'm enjoying it, that it's still enriching my life and that kind of thing. So life is good. So that's a lot of what's happened to me along the way. Is you try, you recover, you heal, things get a lot better. At least I'm one of the lucky ones where this happened. But with a severe brain injury, it doesn't completely go away. I'm not the same Deb that I was, but I'm okay with that. I'm better than okay with that. I'm much happier with the Deb that I am now. I think I'm certainly much more empathetic and kinder and all that kind of thing. My life is harder now, but I don't really see it. Yes, yesterday I had a bad brain day, but I know that it'll get better. And when it's a good brain day, my brain goes, oh, it's always been good. It'll always be good. It'll be wonderful. I live in the moment. I don't know why I don't live in the moment when it's really bad, but I just don't. It's sort of, I know this will go away. I'll just stay in my room and sleep it through, hopefully. I have tried numerous painkillers and whatnot. That's been a journey in itself. But something interesting happened with the writing is these past 2-3 years, I figured out that learning to live with brain injury isn't just about the logistics, the mechanisms and techniques. It's about learning to own it, that it's part of who you are. And it's not just, yes, it's there every day. It's about realizing that your whole life is interwoven with the brain injury. I mean, it's there whatever you do. It comes up in my writing and conversations, no matter what the topic is. It's very much part of who you are. And realizing that I kind of knew it along the way, but over the past 2-3 years, it's really clicked. And that's through the writing. So that was a long journey. This all happened, the bleeds happened in 2007. So we're talking more than 10 years later did I start owning it as a part of myself. And as I said, I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy with my new life. I do have issues with severe depression from the bloody brain, but it's well managed. And ultimately, life is good. Thank you very much. And now for questions.
Thank you, Deb. That was great. If you guys would like, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording now. If I can figure out how to do that. Oh, it's here.